Salutations, Globehead Sheeple. Welcome to Metasheep Slaughterhouse. I'm your host, Dr. Cancer MD, here with another filthy, revolting concoction of cardboard. Today I got pure Zoodiacs. That's right. Even with Broad Bowl, DRIDENT, and Barrage all banned, and Rat Pier still at 1, I'm still playing this deck, and I'm doing pretty good with it. I got first place a couple times. The biggest tournament I got first place at had about 20, 25 people, something like that. And I don't play this the blind second Eagle Booster way that I know Robbie Cole does. I like his build. I think it's very cool, but I wanted to try something different and see if I could still go first with this deck despite all the bans. And yeah, I won't waste your time any longer. Let's get right into the deck profile. Starting with the triple Zodiac Ram. This one I think is the best one in the current year because it has the ability to give the Zodiac monster it's attached to the effect that it can negate a trap that targets it by detaching a material. So if your opponent has an imperm set, you can negate that. And the great thing about it is it's not once per turn. It's not once per anything. So I like to give my monster, before I try to go to battle phase, swing directly, I like to give it 2 or more materials so that I can negate 2 potential imperms or dogmatic punishments, whatever they might have. It's really nice to be able to do that. This deck, when you go second, you are still trying to make a big Zeus, obviously, because every Zodiac card is a 1-card, 6-material Zeus now with some new support, which I'll be talking about. And that's why I believe this one is the best one, because it lets you play through a lot of back row. Then I think the second best one in today's format is Kataroost. By the way, a lot of people say Cataroost, but it's a rooster, and it's called Kataroost because it's got a weapon called a Katar. Something for the nerds there. Anyway, this one is like a slightly worse version of Ram, although in some ways it can be better. This one, it can negate Veilers and Mourners that would target it, any monster effect, SP, banish, whatever. It gives the Zodiac that it's attached to the ability to detach and negate that effect. So you can force this through a board or through some Veilers, Mourners, whatever. We're all about negation, and being able to go for Zodiac monsters that already have negation built in is really good. Oh, and by the way, these both have effects when they die by battle. This one, it can shuffle back a zoo, so I guess you could replenish some of your resources. That one's probably not going to come up. This one has the better grave effect. Ram, when it dies, it reborns another Zodiac. So I actually used that effect to avoid taking lethal damage the other day. Then we got triple Whiptail. This one I think is probably the worst one, and it's not that great because it doesn't have a built-in negation effect like the others. What this one does is, on a quick effect, it can attach itself to another Zodiac as material, and then it gives the monster it's attached to the ability to banish something that it swings into. So this is actually pretty good for dealing with like a big nib token that you put in defense, which is always nice to deal with. And the great thing about its attach effect is that you can use it to make a 4-mat Zeus, or let's say you already have a Zeus with 4 or 5 materials, you can make it a 6-mat Zeus without having to overextend very much, because instead of summoning another time, you just attach this to it. This one's probably the worst, but the way I've built the deck in the current format, we had to make some changes, obviously, since the last time this deck was played. I got 1 copy of Rat Pier. Rat Pier is still really nice. It's a foolish on normal summon, and that's pretty much all it does. But sometimes you need to foolish a zoo for whatever purposes. You can use this card to make what I call the double floater board, which is you'll have 2 monsters that both float, one of them being Ram, the other being NXEs that's in my my extra deck, which I'll show you in a second. And the other thing is this: if people don't know the deck, which a lot of people don't because this deck is not being played by anybody but me, they'll often throw hand traps at Rat Pier if you start with it, which can bait a good hand trap. Sometimes you just need to be able to foolish a zoo. I'll talk about those situations down the line. So we got some well, this is more engine than non-engine here, honestly. Fenrir is an honorary Zodiac monster because it's kind of like a mini Drident in and of itself. You set this on the board going first, and you have kind of a pseudo bad Drident, which is really nice. And then also going second, it's Fenrir. It pushes through boards pretty similar to the Zodiac monsters. So Fenrir is just insane. Definitely mandatory. For some non-engine now, we got triple copies of Ash Blossom. I think I'll just lay the hand traps out here. Triple copies of Ash. I like triple copies of Ogre in the main. This card just hits so many things. Like, Ogre is so nice. And the fact that you can use it as a board breaker also is really good in this deck, because you're trying to force your Zeus plays to go through, and being able to Ogre that IP, being able to Ogre that SP, whatever. It's really nice as both a board breaker and a hand trap. Triple Nibiru. This card's insane in here. You wipe the board, and then you just normal summon, make a big Zeus, and wipe the token. Putting the token in defense guarantees you'll have something to attack into if your opponent can't remove it from the field. So even if they negate your monster, you can still just force the attack through. Yeah, Nib is really nice, really clean. And we got triple Shifter. This is still a Shifter deck. It's a little weird now because we play the Xyz armor package, which I'll show you in a second to go first. So there is a bit of confliction with Shifter, but a lot of the time Shifter by itself is enough to make people pass turn. And going second, this card's just insane. You Shifter them, and then you make a full Zeus and banish all their stuff. And then the last hand trap we got, running out of space here, is triple Imperm. It's Imperm, it's a board breaker, it's a hand trap. What else can you say about Imperm? It's just really nice. So that's 15 total hand traps in the main deck. It's a lot of them because that's how you need to play the game these days. You need to have a lot of hand traps. Then for the Xyz armor package, which I just talked about, one armored Xyz and one full armored Xyz. These are both bricks, so they really suck to draw, but they add you so much consistency to the deck because now every Zodiac monster is a one-card bad DRIDENT going first. You make the zoo, then you overlay the Xyz armor card, and you search both of these cards, and it basically gives you a non-targeting inhale, like the DDD boss monster. It can inhale a monster on the field as Xyz material to it as a quick effect. So it makes every zoo equals that, basically. It's kind of awkward, but we don't have DRIDENT. Obviously, if DRIDENT were to come back, I'd cut these. This is what we got to do. Sometimes it really sucks. So the reason I still also play Rat Pier is because if you draw one of these, but you still open Rat Pier, you can still do the combo. But otherwise, if you open one of these, that combo is kind of dead. It's not a big deal. It's really just a secondary interruption. And plus, that engine eats hand traps all the time. They're always just going to ash the Xyz when you try to search. It's genuinely just bait half the time. My interruptions mostly becomes from my hand traps and floodgates, so I don't really care. Triple copies of Desires. I think this card is always correct at 3. Everyone wants to fight me about this card. This card's insane. It's just Pot of Greed, especially in this deck. I use double Desires within the first 3 turns. Like, anytime I draw a second Desires, I'm using it probably turn 3. Because this deck, I genuinely, as long as I have a zoo in hand or I draw into a zoo, I genuinely don't care what is in my deck. I can just banish all of it. I can banish, my entire deck, and as long as I've got a zoo monster in my hand, I'm good to go. Which gives this deck a very uniquely decent grind game. Desires is definitely needed. And then this is how we also go first, in addition to the Xyz armor package, which is Floodgates. Hooray! Well, you're on Metasheep Slaughterhouse. I'm Dr. Cancer MD. There's going to be some Floodgates, so deal with it. Deck Lockdown, to me, this is like the best Floodgate in the game right now. It just shuts everybody down. It doesn't matter if you're a shifter deck, if you're a meta deck. Every deck is just going to sit until this card makes itself leave the field. I like Zeusing the board and then slapping this down, and it just seals the game. Or you go first, set it up, they pass turn, and then you Zeus them. So deck Lockdown, I think it's one of the best Floodgates. You can either remove it yourself if you want to, although you're never going to search, or it'll just get rid of itself. Then Triple Macro. I'm playing this instead of D-Fissure because I do not give a crap about Veilers, Ogres, or Drolls. I really don't care that much about them. So what I'm more concerned with is beating bad matchups, which are Runic can be a really bad matchup, and Lab can be a really bad matchup. So this card, if I set this up going first, it just makes the grind game so much easier because they just waste all their resources. So that's why I'm playing this instead of D-Fissure. And the last card in the main deck is I'm maining 1 copy of Anti-Spell because I had 1 space, and I said this is like the most busted Floodgate ever. What's great is you go first, set this up, flip it. Nobody expects this game 1, so they're just going to set like 4 or 5 spells, and then next turn you Zeus them all away, and then the game is over at that point. I'm not playing Lingering Floodgates like D-Barrier or Mistaken Arrest or anything like that in the main deck because I like that these last until you get rid of them. And it's like, if your opponent does threaten you and you end up having to wipe the board, they still had to play really weird in order to get around the Floodgate, so you still hurt them. And I just like the ability to turn the Floodgate off whenever I want to. I can keep it up, indefinitely, and just never end up Zeusing if I have to. So some cards I didn't play in the main deck, but I wanted to talk about. I didn't play Thoroughblade, but he's on the chopping block. He's next up. He has a really cool effect for drawing cards. If you drew a handful of zoos, he can give your monster piercing damage, which is really nice, and he's got a pretty big attack. So he's probably next up to Whiptail. I just thought Whiptail's ability to help you play under Nib a little bit was a little bit more important than Thoroughblade, so that's why I didn't end up playing Thoroughblade. But again, like I said, he's up for consideration. Bunny Blast. This one gives your zoo monster spell targeting negation if they target you with like a runic spell or something. The thing is good runic players are just going to make Sleipnir and target it with that. So this card is basically useless. It's just not that great. I ended up cutting Tenki entirely from the main deck because I was losing to this card more than I should have. There was a situation where I was in a top deck war with my opponent on a meta deck, and he top decked Ash twice for my 2 Tenkis that I top decked. And also, it ended up losing me another game because it conflicted with deck lockdown. So I just said, forget it, I'm just going to play more zoo names. The reason I did like this card is being able to search Rat Pier so that you can either fix your hand when you drew one of the Xyz armor bricks, or you can make the double floater board that Rat Pier can make if you want to make that. And also, I like being able to have technically 6 copies of Ram Ram and Qatar Roost. If I want to play a certain way through a board, I can access either one of them. But this card was just costing me so many games that I just had to cut it. I'm not looking back. I want to play it, but I don't want to lose. So, and the Monster Reborn, this card, a lot of people play this as like an alternate Barrage since Barrage is banned. And I think that's cute, but I don't know. I'd rather just play some Floodgates and Hand Traps, and maybe they'll bring Barrage back, maybe not. I don't care. I just want DRIDENT back to 1, but even if I don't get it, this deck is still fun. So the extra deck, I play 1 copy of Hammer Kong. This recently got cut down to 1 from 2 because of a new support card that came out in Battles of Legend, which I'll show you in a second. And he's just a stepping stone. He doesn't really do anything. He's just another zoo material. 2 Tiger Mortar. This one can attach Xyz materials to Xyz monsters on field, so it could technically come up, but usually you're just using these zoo monsters to climb into massive Zeuses, and that's about it. And then Chakanine, he's the most useful one other than the next one, which is obviously Borbo, but he is a Monster Reborn effect, so sometimes that can come up for... this is how you make the double floater board, which I was talking about. Then the most important zoo by a long shot is Borbo. He can attack directly. He has some other convoluted effect where he can like nuke your opponent's board and hand if he has 12 materials, but I'm not sure that that's ever resolved ever. Maybe back in like actual zoo format, but I can't think of a situation that would ever resolve. But I don't even think I can get him to that many materials. I just use him to attack directly so I can make big Zeus. And then this is an honorary Zodiac #1, Drill Driver Vespinato. You just overlay it on top of any rank 4, and it's a 2500 body that does piercing, and it's the other half of the double floater board. It floats into a level 5 or lower monster, so basically any Zodiac when it dies. So when you set up the double floater board, it'll be Ram Ram plus Drill Driver, and you have essentially a lot of follow-up. If your opponent, you're walling up, it'll be hard for your opponent to break that. But anyways, the piercing damage is really nice. Just being able to have another big body, even though you can't make a Zeus on top of him the same turn you summon him, it's still nice to have the utility, more damage. And then this is the new card. I couldn't wait for this card to come out. This full armored utopic Ray Lancer came out in Battles of Legend Terminal Revenge. This card is insane. It is some of the best support I could possibly ask for in this deck. The more I play with it, the more I realize how cracked this card is. So you can summon this on top of any rank 4 by just discarding 1 spell or trap. That's all you have to do is just discard the spell or trap. So extra desires, extra floodgates, dead Xyz armor pieces, whatever. Discard them, slap this on top of any zoo. It lets you make any Zodiac monster into a 1 card plus discard 6 material Zeus. So any 1 Zodiac is now a 6 material Zeus if you can discard a spell trap. That's amazing. It additionally has some other effects. At the start of the opponent's or at the start of your battle phase, you can negate all your opponent's monsters in attack position. That's really nice. You can get over some targeting protection or something like that. It also has the effect to put all your opponent's monsters down by 500 attack. So this is just an immediate out to SP pass. This is an immediate out if they pass on Totally Awesome. Fenrir, it just gets over so many things, and it's any 1 zoo gives you this big beat stick. The other effect it has is once it beats over a monster by battle, you can detach to swing again, and you can either swing directly or at another monster. So this helps you close out games. And the craziest part, the cherry on top of this card, is it's a Beast Warrior. The Zodiac monsters, I didn't even know this until it happened online. They don't give the monster that they're attached to effects just based on whether it's a zoo monster or not. They give it to all Beast Warrior Xyzes they're attached to. So this card gains Ram Ram's trap negating protection. It gains Katarus Veiler protection. It gains Whiptail's ability to banish stuff. This card is this is an honorary Zodiac, and yeah, it's insane. In my testing, it's just so good. So rambled about that one enough. On to the Xyz armor, Xyz monsters. We got 1 Armor Fortress and 1 Dark Knight Lancer. These are your bad DRIDENT, basically. Any zoo monster equals this card. This card detaches 2 to search the bricks. Then you pass turn. On your opponent's turn, you use the trap to rank up into this one. And then as a quick effect, you can banish the trap from grave, equip an Xyz monster to this guy from your graveyard, and then he becomes the DDD boss monster. He just inhales non-targeting 1 monster on the field to him as material. It's actually a really strong disruption, but it's not. You don't really care if that combo gets stopped. It's just another added layer of disruption, which is cool. And then the best card in the extra deck is still, of course, the Triple Zeus. Going second, we are just pushing into this guy, nuking the board, and now we can make him at 6 materials. Technically, you can make him 7 if you have a Whiptail in hand, but Usually we just make them at 2 to 4, but if you want to make a 6 or 7, you can, and your opponent is just going to cry. This card by itself just beats so many boards. It beats all their follow-up. I love this card so much. And people always wonder why I play 3. Like, you can make all 3 of them. This deck actually has a good grind game because you just make another Zeus. All your you don't care if they banish your deck with Runic. You don't care if you desires half your deck. Your grind game is in the extra, and you have a lot of resources to just make Zeus after Zeus after Zeus. And the last card in the extra is the one Typhon. I think this card is so freaking underrated. Excuse me. I think this card is so much better than people give it credit for. People will be like, oh, well, I make it 1 in every 10 games. I don't. I make it all the time. It actually won me my last match at the tournament where I got first place. I had nibbed my opponent in a situation where I'd already burned through all my Zeuses, all my resources. So all I had left was 2 nibs in hand. He played in the first nib, and I was able. I wasn't able to make Typhon that turn, but the next turn he played into the second nib, and I nibbed him, and then I overlaid Typhon, bounced the token back, and started poking, and it got me the game. So Typhon's crazy. For the side deck, we got a small, well, medium-sized bestial package of Mag, Baldric, Druis. Voiceless can be a really hard matchup because they just eat hand traps, and Branded as well because they just put up too much recursion and stuff. So I like having bestials to defeat those. And plus, this deck can often struggle to go for game, so these can put some extra damage on the board. I like Baldric instead of Saronir because you can tribute like a dead Zeus that has no more materials or another bestial or something. You can actually get its effect, whereas with Saronir, you probably wouldn't be able to get its effect at all. Then I have triple copies of Ghost Bell. This is here for lab. It's actually really good against Snake Eye because you can just hold it for the princess on your turn and force your Zeus play to go through. It's a board breaker and it's a hand trap, so it's kind of in the same vein as Ogre. So I really like Bell. Then small back row hit package, just 1 Duster, 2 Lightning Storm. This serves as a front row and back row breaker, which is nice. And it's just cool. You need to get rid of all those imperms before you start swinging. Triple Judgment to go first. It's Judgment. It's Judgment. And then I have a little bit of spice here, which is Column Judgment, as I like to call it. Iron Thunder. This is just more copies of Judgment. The reason I'm playing so many going first cards in this deck is because your opponent is just going to side all kinds of back row hate and evenly matched and Duster and Lightning Storm and Talents and drop. There's so many board breakers in the game. I just want to guarantee that I don't get blown out by those cards. I don't want to gamble on drawing Judgment. I want to be certain that I'm going to draw an Omni Negate to make my board stronger. So, and that's the entire deck. I just wanted to talk about Cosmic because a lot of times, like I'll switch my deck up depending on which locals or regionals or whatever I go to. And if I feel like there's going to be like a bunch of Runic stun, I might cut the Bestials and put Cosmics in instead, or maybe cut Bell or something. It's just something I do based on which locals I go to. So that's the entire deck. Remember that Chris Hansen is always watching you. Don't be a Globehead sheeple. Gold rares look amazing. Triple Ash is correct. Don't play 2. Triple Desires is correct. Don't play any less than that. What else? What else? Oh yeah, remember to dislike the video. Don't subscribe or unsubscribe. Don't even think about touching that notification bell. Send it to all your worst enemies. And yeah, have a good one.